All right. Good morning, Chris. How you doing?
Good morning, Michael. This is Chris Maher. I'm an attorney in Mahopac, New York. Good morning. Um, this morning I have my associate, Michael DiRienzo, and Michael is an expert on uh, refugees and asylum. Michael, can you tell our audience what asylum eligibility is?
Sure. And good morning, Chris. Thanks for having me on this morning. And this is a subject that it's very popular in the news right now, especially given everything that's going on with the border. And it was very popular over the last 4 years under both the Trump administration and now currently in the Biden administration. And what we're seeing is a lot of people that are coming here and claiming asylum. And when you see that, a lot of people kind of get confused and they think it's this special kind of term, but it really isn't. And it's a asylum is a status that people seek to get, that once they enter into the United States, that they are allowed to stay based upon asylum purposes. And asylum it's not just a United States kind of concept. It's actually a worldwide concept based upon United Nations law and human rights law and things of that nature. And more or less, it comes down to that people that leave their home country, whether it be in Central America, you see a lot in Guatemala or Honduras or places of that, and other places in maybe Africa and things like that. It's that they're leaving their country and they're requesting to be granted asylum here in the United States because they can't go back to their country because of one or two things. They were persecuted in the past, or they have a well-founded fear of future persecution based upon five groups. Those five groups would be race, religion, membership in a particular social group, nationality, or political opinion. And so what we've been seeing is a lot of the Central American population right now that are coming in through Guatemala is that Guatemala and Honduras and places like that nature of like gangs and things like that they're being attacked because they're either not a member of that gang, or the government may not be the people that are actually doing the persecuting, but they're not stopping the gangs. And so it doesn't have to be a government actor that is kind of persecuting an individual, but it's actually the government's not able to kind of stop them.
Michael, how does someone from a foreign country apply for asylum?
Sure. So the difference too with a lot of people don't realize is that if you enter the country either legally or illegally, maybe through the border and there was no issues down there, or you come in from like a working visa or a student visa and overlaps, is that you still have the ability to apply. And an application for asylum is relatively kind of simple in comparison to other things, but it's actually a lot harder to prove than a lot of people realize, because you have to kind of prove what I just said. And you can go one of two routes. For a lot of people that are here either legally or illegally, some of them are in what's called deportation proceedings. So they've been caught by ICE or things like that, and they said, okay, you're not here legally, we're going to deport you. And what we would do as attorneys and other people to say is that we understand that, Your Honor, Judge, that the client is here illegally, but they actually have a right to stay. And you file what's called an I-589, and it's a government document. It's relatively simple that kind of explains everything that we talked about earlier, that yes, I am here legally or illegally, I guess at this point, but I can't go back because I was either persecuted or I have a well-founded fear that I will be persecuted in the past. Now, what a lot of people don't realize, though, is that you only have 1 year from your last date of entry into the United States to file. But as we're seeing kind of on a daily basis, really about what's going on in the world, is that there are some kind of changed circumstances situations. So say you've been here for 5-6 years and your home country has been fine, but then you've learned real quick that if you go back, you're going to be murdered or something's going to happen or things of that nature. And so that's what's called changed circumstances. So it's really hard to prove changed circumstances situation, which is why you do really need an attorney to kind of help walk through those kind of change of circumstances and kind of file those motions on your behalf.
Michael, we read a lot in the paper about people from foreign countries coming here and getting involved in the criminal justice system. What effect, if any, does that have on someone's asylum case?
Of course. So like every other thing, it depends on the severity. There are some certain things that cannot be what's called waived. It's depending upon the severity of the case. If you're involved in some high traffic murders or something like that, or human trafficking, or really kind of on the worst of the situation, it is an automatic bar, and there's really nothing any attorney can do for you to kind of get over that hurdle. But if it's kind of something a little more lesser, for instance, a drinking and driving, a DUI, something you're very familiar with, excuse me, a DWI, something you know a lot about, there are some ways that you can kind of work with both a criminal attorney and an immigration attorney to make sure that one's not going to affect the other. So that's why it's really important that regardless of if you're in proceedings or not, if you're not a citizen and a United States citizen, and you're here either legally or illegally, and you're pulled over or anything like that, it's really important that you contact both a criminal attorney and an immigration attorney, which luckily your office has both.
Yes. Michael, what happens in situations where someone is petitioning for asylum and they have a spouse and children?
So that's one of the nice things about the immigration court and asylum is that in the event that, for instance, I know you're married with children. So if you came here and your wife and your children were still at your home country, then you can actually apply on their behalf, and they can basically be granted asylum on your petition. So you're allowed to petition on your family members so they don't have to come over and figure out their own case, but they can come over on your kind of petition. And so that's what's nice about this kind of area of the law, is that unlike kind of some different areas, for instance, criminal or civil, or really almost every other area that we can think of where it's only based upon you and your individual life and your individual decisions, in the event that you're granted asylum, you can petition for your immediate family, which can include your wife, your children, siblings sometimes, and parents, grandparents. It depends on some of the specifics, but there is a lot of discretion is what's called, and that actually kind of leads me to the next point. What I wanted to talk about too this morning was what a lot of people don't realize is Chris, and you could probably answer this better than I could, is when you go in front of a judge and you plead guilty to something, how much leeway does that judge really have to kind of decide of like your sentence?
Well, in state court, a judge has more leeway than in a federal court, but judges have leeway to administer justice as they see fit. Right,
but it's based upon a lot of guidelines. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right. So in immigration court, it is discretionary, and so unlike it's based upon what you present to the judge, to the immigration judge or the asylum officer, and they have discretion based upon what you've produced to them to kind of say one way or another whether or not you've been able to prove that case. And that discretionary middle ground is one of the hardest things to kind of prove, because you as an asylum seeker have to kind of prove to it's not a judge, it's not a jury, it's not a criminal case in that matter, where it's preponderance of the law and all those things. You have to prove, and you have to show to the judge that who has discretionary to kind of prove based upon, or to kind of decide based upon all factors considered, whether or not this person has shown that they are entitled to asylum. And so what I tell clients all the time is that you can have a great case, you can not have a great case. A lot depends upon you as an individual and how credible you are and how important and how well you've kind of shown that you are actually entitled to. But at the end of the day, that judge has more discretion than he does in other courts, any other judge in other courts, to kind of decide whether or not he or she feels you're entitled to the status.
Michael, this asylum process that you've been discussing this morning, how long does that process take in the system?
Sure. So that's one of the issues right now too, in terms of what's going on. So if you're in deportation proceedings, you're gonna receive what's called a notice to appear, and that's kind of like a charging document, and that's just to say exactly what we were talking about before, where it's just going to say, X person, you're here illegally, or you entered here on this date, your visa, or you don't have a visa, or you're not allowed to be here, therefore you're in deportation proceedings. And then after you get that notice to appear, which usually takes a few maybe months, pre-COVID, I was seeing approximately you get that notice. It's maybe about 3 weeks, 4 weeks out before you kind of get that. You have to go to the judge. And so once you go to the judge, judge has an option to, you have the option once you go to that on that notice of appear date, you have the option to say 6 months, which is kind of expedited. And a lot of people prefer to do that because there's some issues in terms of work visas as well. And so there's a lot of kind of hoops to jump through. And so I've had a case on prior COVID, it would be about 1.5 to 2 years before you finally, if you don't take the expedited route.
Mm-hmm. Michael, I appreciate all of your insights this morning. If anybody has any questions, they can contact you in our offices. Lastly, what has changed under this new administration in Washington from the prior administration?
And that's one of the biggest things that people really need to understand right now. And it actually kind of dovetails a little bit too about what we discussed last week with the marijuana laws, is just because the Biden administration is admittedly more pro immigration and pro kind of allowing people to stay, it doesn't mean that things are changing overnight. Judges aren't, it's not like, okay, now Biden is in, I don't have to really try that hard to kind of get to prove my case or show it. I just need to show up, and this liberal kind of judge is just going to be like, oh yeah, you're fine, you can stay. It's not like that. It's still just as hard to prove the case, and it's still just as hard to prove that you're eligible to asylum now. Things will change a little bit in terms of the laws that were made about whether or not how to prove, for instance, the particular social group, one of those kind of matters, and the nexus between those two. But it's not changed overnight. President Biden said that basically his first few months in office, to say that we're not going to undo everything that President Trump put into place overnight. So it's going to take a year, 2 years, 3 years. It might even take his entire administration before everything that changed prior to that is changed back to maybe a little more lenient. But at the end of the day, it's still extremely difficult to prove these cases, regardless of what the administration is. And that's why it's really, really important that you have an attorney that handles and knows kind of the ins and outs of asylum and things like that to really make sure that you can get the help that you need.
Michael, let me ask you this. How did you become involved in becoming an expert in asylum law?
Well, I'll say that I'm far from an expert in that I've been practicing in this area for 4 years, but this area is ever changing, especially now with all the administrations. And so that's why as an attorney that like myself that handles these kinds of matters, we're always making sure we're up to date with all these things and trying to ensure that we know what the new laws are and things of that nature. And I've been handling these cases 4 years pro bono for a lot of matters through various organizations that individuals who've kind of come here and escaping various political issues from Africa, for instance. I've handled a lot of those cases. Overnight regime change, and they're out there and they're changing. And I've also handled a lot of Guatemalan cases where gangs and things like that. And so I've been doing these matters both pro bono and non pro bono for about 4 years now. And these are the types of cases that I really enjoy doing, because this is a life and death situation for a lot of people. And the United States it's a country of immigrants, and regardless of your political beliefs, This is a right that people have, and like everything else, if they prove and if they can show that they are entitled to it under the law, then it's our duty as attorneys to help make sure that they are, they get the help that they deserve.
Michael, thank you. People can contact you at the address at the bottom of the screen.
That they can, and they can give your office a call. We're here all the time. We're always answering calls. Hablas español, so we can speak a little Spanish. So for our Guatemalan clients, and we can, or Honduras or Central American clients that are coming in right now, going through the process, they can feel free to give us a call. We're here and we're ready to help.
Thank you, Michael.
All right, thanks a lot, Chris. Good to see you.
You too.